Welcome once again to Mondays with Marty. My name's Cassie, and this is my dog Marty, and then we also have German Shorthair, and this is Belle. Belle is not really participating, but I do have a lot of treats in my pocket right now, so she's hanging out. So today we're actually going to give Marty a bath, which is probably one of his least favorite activities, but it is good to bathe your dogs on a routine basis, just to get all of that dirt and debris out of their coat that can build up. In the winter time, if they get around salt or dirty roads, just giving them a good bath is a good opportunity to kind of clean out their coats a little bit. Plus, you're getting your hands on your dog, and for Marty, he's a pretty fluffy guy, so I really don't know his body condition score until I get him completely wet, so that's a good opportunity for me to look at how much he weighs and whether I'm feeding him too much or too little. You can over-bathe your dog, so bathing them too often will remove the nice microbiome that they have on their skin that's full of good bacteria and skin cells and oils that helps protect their skin, which can cause some issues like dry skin and hot spots and some yeast infections. So you don't want to over-bathe your dog, but again, it is good to bathe them now and again. So for me, I grew up with dogs, and my parents really liked to have us bathe our dogs for them. So we would just tie them to a tree or some other stationary object. I have Marty on the fence. It's kind of a wonky way to do it, but it works. Some other options are a lot of groomers actually have nice tubs that you can go and groom your dog at for a small fee. So if you don't want to deal with this, that's a great way to do it as well. For little dogs, utility sinks work really well. And then of course there's always the bathtub. I do try and avoid the bathtub just because I don't want all of this dog hair going down our drain, because it will clog the drain. Plus, the footing is generally pretty slippery for dogs. So not only do you have to worry about them just not liking a bath in general, but you can put them at risk of injury having them on that slippery surface. So when I can, I just bathe them outside and attach them to a fence. I do use a quick release knot, so if I were to pull this, it would come completely free and he could get away. That's more of a safety precaution. I don't ever leave him unattended tied up like this, but even still, something could happen where he gets hung up, and I want to be able to loosen that leash up right away, just from a safety perspective. So I always use a nice quick release knot, and I do keep it somewhat tight. He's got about a foot of rope, because as you'll see, he will be moving around, because like most dogs, he doesn't really like baths, but again, he knows that he has to deal with it, and he'll calm down after a little while. And I do pick a leash that I know is not going to bleed, because once I get it wet, you could have some color run, and with him having this pretty white ruff, I don't want that to change colors. So I do make sure I use a leash that is color solid, and then I wear clothes that I don't care about getting wet, because I am absolutely going to get somewhat wet. So that's how I start, and then of course I have my shampoo handy, and we just get the hose going. And I like to use kind of a spray nozzle just because it's kind of gentle for him and still gets him wet. So I give him a nice good soak. I do generally try and avoid his face. He is luckily a pretty clean dog, so I don't really need to get it too wet. But especially with the ears, like, you really don't want to get water in their ears, because one, it can get in there really deep and they just don't really know what's going on. So they're going to shake their heads and they're going to start scratching, and it could cause some issues in that regard. Plus, if the water stays down there long enough, you could get some infections. So keeping water out of their ears is pretty key. Now with Marty, rinsing him or getting him wet is kind of a challenge, because he has a really nice double coat, which is slightly waterproof, and as you can see, he looks pretty wet, but if I push this hair back, he is very dry underneath against his skin. So great demonstration of how a double coat is supposed to work, but not ideal for bathing. So I really make sure I get him nice and wet all over. Get around his ruff, get his legs, and I I do try and move the hair back as much as I can, but it does take a while for it to actually soak in the water and his britches. So after I get him mostly wet, I'll just start shampooing, because as I start scrubbing, the water will work itself down and he'll get pretty wet. So this is actually a water bottle full of diluted shampoo. With Marty's coat being the way it is, it can be pretty difficult to rinse out. So while I could use an as-is shampoo, and this is actually the Scouts Honor Probiotic Shampoo and Conditioner with avocado oil, I prefer diluting it down. I did follow their recommendations, just because it'll make it a lot easier for me to get it back out of his coat, because you do have to think about that stuff with these double-coated guys. And this shampoo is really nice because it does have the avocado oil in it and the good probiotic, which helps replenish some of the good bacteria and oils onto his skin that get rinsed off or soaked off when you are bathing them. And it smells really good. And actually, this shampoo has, in some third-party testing, shown to help control ringworm and a certain species of yeast. So if you have a dog that has some skin issues, it might be a good option. And I just use a water bottle because, as you can see, I can really kind of direct where I'm soaping him up to make sure that I'm getting sufficient shampoo all over. And I just really get in there with my hands. You can use curry combs and some rubber gloves they have out there for bathing, but I honestly just prefer to use my hands, because I like getting my hands on my dogs just to be able to pull anything out that I might find. Because especially with Marty, he can really hide some burrs in his fur that you don't realize until you start getting your hands on him. So I'm going to give him a nice soap, and I do like to see some lather, just because those suds kind of help to pull out some of the dirt and debris, and it gives me a good indication of what I've gotten where and where I still need to work on. Alright. And one of my other shampoos that I really like, that's already been diluted down, so whereas I had to look up the dilution rate for this shampoo, Vetericyn has a really nice shampoo that it's foam care that's already diluted, so you buy it in a spray bottle and it just sprays foam all over their coat, and it's been the best that I have found to wash out just straight off of the shelf. I was thinking about using that, and then I remembered that I loaned it to my little brother for his golden retriever to try out, and he hasn't given it back to me yet. So he likes it and doesn't want to, and he has a dog that really likes the dirt, so he's getting a bath pretty often. So I just make sure we're nice and clean all over, and again, I don't worry too much about his head because he is pretty clean. If he had dirt running down, between his eyes, I would definitely give him a good rinse. A good option for washing their faces is like a puppy shampoo, because most of the time it's pretty gentle on their eyes, because that's the issue, is you don't really want it getting on their eyes or getting in their eyes. So and I like to really make sure his feet get cleaned. Ideally you do this on a surface that is somewhat clean so that you don't just let them get dirty again. Not always very easy when you are bathing them outside, but again, I'd rather just bathe them outside if I can, because it keeps my house and my facilities cleaner. And make sure you really do pay special attention to their undersides, because obviously that's the closest to the ground aside from their legs, so that's going to pick up some dirt. So we're pretty good right now. I've got soap everywhere, and you can kind of see now how he's a bit more trim once he's soaking wet. There's, that's where his waistline is, so So again, I like to use this to really make sure that he's also at a good weight, because that's pretty important for just long-term health anyway. All right, so now that he's nice and soaking wet and soaked up, it is time to rinse him down. So I like to work back to front when I'm rinsing, and generally I will follow up with my hand. Obviously that's going to happen because that's what dogs do, just to try and really push the soap out. And I like to work back to front just because I don't want to clean or rinse out his back end just to push soap, have the soap run right back over where I rinsed it out. So I always work back to front. And it is important that you do make sure you get all of the soap off of your dogs, because any soap or shampoo that's allowed to stay there could cause, cause issues just in terms of it's going to be really oily and it'll get itchy and uncomfortable, and it's really important to get all of the shampoo off of your dog. Now, it can be difficult depending on the coat of the dog and the shampoo you use, so I always like to kind of rub my hands in it and then look at my hand and see if I can find any bubbles when I'm testing out. So just be patient because it can take a while to get everything out. Alright, so that's bathing your dog. I'm going to take time to rinse him out because it'll take a little while. But make sure you also give them lots of goodies and treats at the end. I always blow dry him at the end, and towel him off a ton just because he does have so much coat, and like once it's wet, it is wet. So it takes a while for him to dry as opposed to just the cursory, just kind of soaking the upper layer. It's not so bad to dry him out. But once that lower layer is wet, it takes a while, so I like to give him a little help with lots of towels and my hair dryer. So I won't subject y'all to that. But anyway, that's bathing your dog. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments, or want to know about some of the shampoos we recommend. We can definitely share that with you. And thanks for tuning in.